The steakhouse had that warm golden glow that made everything feel like it belonged in a memory. Booths wrapped in dark leather, quiet conversations layered over soft country music, and the kind of lighting that made wrinkles disappear but left the truth behind your eyes untouched. I'd reserved the corner table, the one near the fireplace where the flames danced behind glass. I thought it was fitting. Warmth, family, celebration. My husband, Ray, sat across from me, reading the menu like it held the secret to world peace. Our older son, Lazaro, was at my right. Clean-shaven, crisp collar, too quiet. His wife, Marcy, was smiling politely at everyone, and no one in particular. A few of Lazaro's old college friends joined us. Faces I knew, names I didn't keep. They were laughing, sipping wine, trying too hard to look comfortable. This was supposed to be a joyful night. My boy's 30th birthday. And I had a surprise, something I'd spent months saving for. A brand new truck, midnight blue, custom trim. I even picked out the keychain, a leather one that said, "Keep going." I'd told the dealership to deliver it to his driveway that morning, just before we met for dinner. I'd pictured the look on his face all week, that same awe he had when he got his first set of Legos. But tonight, he hadn't said much. He used to be different. A quiet kid, sure, always fixing things, pulling broken hinges off cabinets like it was his job. But his silence used to be soft. Now it felt like a wall. Maybe it was just growing up. People drift, get busy. I told myself not to read too much into it. We passed the bread basket. Ray made a joke about turning 30, something about his own knees going out at 29. Polite laughter followed. Lazaro smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's been a while since we all sat together like this," I offered, my voice just a touch too bright. "You could cut the tension with a butter knife," I heard someone whisper. Maybe Marcy. Maybe I imagined it. Still, I smiled, because family dinners, well, they're where love and silence share the same plate. The server brought out the mains, steaks sizzling, potatoes loaded, glasses refilled. I waited until everyone had taken their first bite before I stood up, holding out the small gift box with the truck keys. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," I began, "and I wanted you to have something that takes you forward, something that reminds you how proud I am." Lazaro took the box, opened it slowly. Inside, the keys lay on that leather tag. His name was engraved beneath the words. He smiled, hugged me, but it wasn't a son's hug. It was a handshake in disguise. "You didn't have to, Mom, really." I chuckled nervously. "Oh, but I wanted to." Others chimed in. "What a generous gift." "She's always been that kind of mom." Lazaro nodded. "Yeah, that kind." I blinked, missed it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. He slipped the keys into his pocket. For a while the table buzzed. Stories from college, shared photos, plans for the weekend. But Lazaro, he got quieter. And then, as dessert plates were being cleared, he stood, glass in hand, chin lifted, eyes steady. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight," he began. "Means a lot." I smiled. There it was, the moment, the toast. "But," he said, "sometimes gifts come not from love, but from guilt." The room stopped. A fork froze mid-air. "And sometimes," he went on, "we drive trucks not to move forward, but to run away." Silence. Thick, choking silence. My throat closed. My cheeks burned. I tried to laugh, make it light. "You always had your father's humor," I said, forcing a smile that didn't listen to my heart. But he didn't smile back. I looked around. Ray was staring at his plate. Marcy looked like she wanted to disappear. One of his friends whispered something, but it got swallowed by the stillness. Inside, everything started cracking. What was that? A joke, a message, a confession? My fingers trembled. I felt the blood rush from my face. I reached for my water, missed the glass, then caught it with both hands. My mind raced through memories. Had I done something? Had I missed something? He stood so still, then slowly lowered his glass. That's when I saw it, the glass. Not from the restaurant, not from their set. It was chipped at the rim, just barely. A tiny notch near the base, from our kitchen, from home. My voice caught in my throat. "Why that glass?" I whispered. He brought it, on purpose, from our cabinet, from a time before the silence. He brought a piece of our past to this table. And I knew something was about to break. The ride home was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The kind of silence that hummed like tension in the air before a storm. Ray kept his eyes on the road, both hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. The headlights cut through the empty streets, but inside the car everything felt dim. I watched his jaw clench once, then settle back into stillness. I wanted to ask him if he understood what Lazaro meant back there, if the toast was some twisted joke or something more. But the words stuck in my throat like they were afraid of what might come out. "Let it go," Ray said without looking at me. That was all. 3 words. The same 3 he'd used when my mother died, when Lazaro left home, when I found those texts on his phone years ago. Let it go. But I couldn't. Not this time. I stared out the window, watching familiar trees pass like strangers, and the words kept replaying like a scratched record. Sometimes gifts come not from love, but from guilt. Sometimes we drive trucks not to move forward, but to run away. Each line pulled at something inside me, something I'd buried. It wasn't just a toast, it was a door he cracked open. Back at the house, the porch light flickered once as we pulled in. Ray went straight inside without a word. I followed slowly, heels clicking against the old hardwood, as I made my way to the kitchen to drop my purse. That's when I saw it. The glass, sitting there by the sink like it had always belonged, chipped near the base, a sliver missing from years ago. But I knew it the second I saw it. My mother's wine glass. She'd only used it once, then wrapped it in newspaper and packed it away after some cousin's wedding. Said it was too delicate to trust our cabinets. I thought it had shattered during one of our moves. I hadn't seen it in over a decade, until tonight. My fingers trembled as I reached out to touch it. This wasn't random. Lazaro had brought it back, on purpose. And suddenly I wasn't standing in my kitchen anymore. I was back in the living room on a cold night years ago. Lazaro was 10. I was folding laundry and Ray was yelling about what? I can't even remember now, something stupid. Lazaro had stepped in, said something simple like, "Don't talk to her like that." Ray turned to him full of rage and called him soft. Said he was too emotional, that he needed to toughen up or life would crush him. The yelling got louder. My hands froze mid-fold, and then a crash. Lazaro had knocked the wine glass off the shelf when he stormed out. It hit the tile, chipped but didn't break. I remembered how everyone looked at him that night like he was the problem, like the glass was more important than his voice, and I had said nothing, not a word. Now here it was again. A message. That toast, it wasn't about the truck, it was about the silence, the things we let slide. He wasn't toasting me, he was reminding me. I stood there in the dim light, heart pounding, when I suddenly needed something for my headache, for the pressure building behind my eyes. I pulled open the kitchen drawer for aspirin and felt paper brush my fingers, a folded piece of yellowed stationery, my name on the front, in Lazaro's handwriting. To Mom, if you ever wonder why I stopped trying. I sat down. My knees gave out without warning. At first I didn't want to open it. Felt like reading something I wasn't meant to. But it was here, now, like it had been waiting. His words were shaky but clear. I used to think if I just did more, tried harder, you'd see me. But the more I tried, the quieter things got, the louder Dad got, the more invisible I became. He talked about how silence had become the rule in our home, That rage was allowed, but questions weren't. I didn't want to become like him, but I also didn't want to disappear like you. And then, at the bottom, you once told me that silence was safer than screaming, but I think silence is what broke us. I pressed the letter to my chest, felt my ribs close around it. Tears came. Not the kind you let fall in front of people, the kind that hurt your throat on the way up. Ray walked in, paused when he saw me sitting there. "You're still on that nonsense?" he asked, barely masking his irritation. I didn't answer, didn't look up. The chipped glass sat next to me, catching the light. He left. The floor creaked under his feet, and I stayed there, alone, staring at that scarred glass. He wasn't asking me to fix it. He was asking me to see it. And I missed it. Again. "It's not the truck," I whispered to no one. It was never the truck. I stood, suddenly needing to move. Something pulling me toward Lazaro's old room. I hadn't been in there in months. It still smelled like him, that mix of pine and old books. Then I saw it, taped behind the door. A photo. Lazaro, 10 years old, holding the broken wine glass wrapped in a napkin, looking straight into the camera like he was waiting to be believed. And just below it, another piece of paper, the receipt for the truck, unopened, untouched. The light crept into the house slowly, brushing the walls in soft gold. I'd been awake long before the sun rose, sitting at the edge of the bed feeling the stillness press down on me. The silence wasn't gentle. It was thick, like the air itself carried last night's words, still waiting to land. I made my way down the hallway, my feet careful on the old wood floors. The house had that hollow quiet of a place that used to be full. Lazaro's room was just as he left it, the door half open, the air stale, the faint smell of dust and laundry detergent still clinging to the curtains. In the light of morning, the details stood sharper than before. The untouched bookshelf, the faded posters, the indentation in the carpet where his bed once sat. And there behind the door, taped to the wall, was the photograph. Lazaro, 10 years old, staring at the camera with that look I hadn't known how to read back then. He was holding a napkin in both hands, wrapped around something small. The broken glass. The one that had started all this without us even realizing it. Beneath the photo was the envelope, still sealed, still taped neatly to the wall. I stood there a long time before I moved closer. My hand hovered over the envelope, then stopped. He'd left me this. Not a gift, not an apology, a message, evidence of what I had never been willing to see. He left me the proof, I whispered. Not of what I gave, but of what I didn't. My chest felt tight, like the air was heavier now. What had I really given him? Time? Advice? Or just the expectation that love could be measured by the things I bought? The silence I kept? The peace I pretended was worth the cost? Finally, I pulled the envelope off the wall and tore it open. Inside, the paper was crisp, untouched. The receipt for the truck, and a small handwritten note, for appearance only, not needed. My heart sank. The truck keys were still in the drawer by the door. He'd never even driven it. A memory rose, sharp and clear, the day I'd bought it. I'd been proud, almost excited. I'd wanted to surprise him. And Ray, standing there beside me at the dealership, had said, "A truck won't raise a man." I'd brushed it off, thought I knew better. But maybe he'd been right, just for the wrong reasons. I thought I was giving my son a piece of independence. What I'd really done was wrap my guilt in chrome and call it love. I gave him a vehicle, I murmured, when what he needed was a voice. My phone was on the dresser. I picked it up without thinking and scrolled through old voicemails, ones I never deleted even when I meant to. Near the bottom was one with his name, the date from months ago. I pressed play. His voice came through shaky like he was testing his tone. "Hey, Mom, it's me. I just wanted to say, Silence. A long pause. Then quieter. Forget it. Doesn't matter. That was it. A few seconds. A half start. I'd ignored it. When it came through, probably told myself I'd listen later. I never did. The sound of his voice lingered in my chest, heavy and small at the same time. He had been reaching out, and I'd been too wrapped up in pretending everything was fine to hear him. The guilt didn't hit all at once. It settled, slow and deep, the kind that doesn't fade. I sat on the bed for what felt like hours before I finally stood up and walked back to the kitchen. The chipped glass was still there on the counter, catching the sunlight. The crack ran through the middle like a scar that refused to heal. I touched it. The edge bit into my fingertip. When you ignore a wound long enough, I thought, it starts calling itself a scar. I pulled out a piece of paper from the drawer and began to write. Not sure what it was, maybe a letter, maybe a confession, maybe just the start of a truth I'd been avoiding for years. The sound of the garage door broke the quiet. Ray's footsteps followed, steady, careless. He came in with his usual sigh, grabbing a mug from the counter. "You're still moping over that truck thing?" he said, not even looking at me. I didn't answer at first. Then I turned, meeting his eyes. "Do you ever ask yourself what we've done?" He frowned, the same way he always did when he didn't want to think too hard. "What we've done? You mean raising a son who thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room?" "Yeah, I think about it." "You don't," I said quietly. "You just talk over it." He snorted like the sound itself was an answer. "You always want to dig things up. Let it go for once." "I did," I said. "That's the problem." He didn't respond. Just stood there, jaw tight, then left the kitchen. The door to the garage shut harder than it needed to. The silence returned, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt alive, like something inside me had shifted. I sat there a while longer, staring at the chipped glass, at the paper I'd barely started writing. Then I stood up, walked down the hall, and opened the bedroom door. In the corner under a stack of blankets was the old locked cabinet I hadn't touched in years. I found the small brass key still taped under the drawer, exactly where I'd left it. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside, buried beneath old photo albums and forgotten things, was the camcorder. I wiped the dust off and turned it over in my hands. On the side, in fading ink, was a piece of tape. Thanksgiving, 2002. That year, that day. The same one we all pretended never happened. I sat on the floor, the camera in my lap. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of finally being ready to look. If Lazaro had wanted me to understand, maybe this was where he wanted me to start. By the time I pulled into the lot, the sun was dragging low across the sky, bathing the community hall in a forgiving orange glow that made everything look softer than it felt. I had dressed deliberately, buttoned shirt, clean slacks, no loud colors, not because I wanted to be seen, but because I knew I would be. Bozeman was small, and when Delmar was involved, people watched. The hall buzzed with voices, clinking glasses, and the hum of polite laughter. A banner stretched across the stage, Community Rising, sponsored by Thurston and Friends. Dead center was Delmar's photo, smiling, confident. Beneath it, a smaller placard with a truck printed in grayscale. No mention of Lazaro. Not a line, not even his name. I scanned the crowd. Lazaro's friends were there. Eli, Jonah, even Rachel, his old art teacher. Some nodded politely, others just looked away, as if grief was something you could catch with eye contact. My chest tightened when I passed the refreshment table. A woman from the organizing committee, familiar from church, handed me an envelope with a smile too wide to trust. "For you and your lovely family," she said. My fingers froze on the flap, printed on the front. "To Orlena and family." Not Mrs. Thurston, not even my first name, Orlena. I opened it. A typed note generic and proud, we're honored to recognize Delmar Thurston's continued commitment to Bozeman. His supportive family, wife Orlena, and their wonderful children reflect the values we cherish. My heart hammered in my ears. I stared at the words, rereading the part that left Lazaro out like he never existed. That envelope wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And the logo on the corner? I'd volunteered under that banner for 7 years. I had packed Thanksgiving boxes with those same people. He was being erased. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Not from shame. No, it was something else. That slow, crawling humiliation that comes from realizing everyone's clapping for a story you know isn't true. Delmar took the stage 10 minutes later. Polite applause, camera flashes. That same rehearsed voice he used in interviews. He spoke about perseverance, family values, building legacies. As the applause swelled again, I caught a glance exchanged between two older guests near the front. One leaned in and said, quiet, but loud enough, "It takes someone else's quiet efforts to build someone's stage." It hung there. No one responded. But I saw heads turn toward Lazaro's empty chair. That chair. I had insisted it be left open when we RSVP'd. Delmar hadn't objected, but he hadn't acknowledged it either. And now, in this moment, his absence was being shaped into a story of laziness, not rejection. Phones came out. Instagram, Facebook. A woman near the aisle had been live streaming since he walked on stage. I suddenly understood. The narrative was no longer ours. It belonged to anyone with Wi-Fi. As the event drew to a close, I made my way toward the side of the stage, cutting through the crowd. Delmar had disappeared behind the curtains. I moved faster. Before I reached the side entrance, one of the organizers stepped in front of me. "He's resting," she said, too sweet, too firm. I didn't stop. "Where is my son's name?" I shouted. The noise died behind me. I could feel the pause ripple through the room. A few phones tilted my way. Delmar stepped out slowly, face measured. "You're overreacting, dear," he said. "It's just semantics." Semantics? I took a step forward. Semantics erase people. They erase pain. They rewrite truth so it can be printed on banners. He held his smile, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. "This isn't the place." "No," I said, my voice level. "It never is. That's how this keeps happening." Someone coughed, chairs scraped. No one interrupted, but the silence grew a spine. Delmar turned and walked back behind the curtain. He wouldn't fight in public. He never had to. That was always my job. I left before the raffle, before the last speech. I didn't want their cookies or their courtesy. Back home, the house felt too quiet again. I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope from the event still clenched in my hand. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. The event photos were already up, captions like, "Thurston family shines tonight, proud to support real leaders. Wonderful to see everyone together." One post buried under the comments stopped me. No photo, just words. "Who's the other son they never talk about?" I stared at it, then screenshot it, saved it. The glass, the same chipped one, was on the nightstand now. I didn't remember moving it. I reached for it, then set it down again. I picked up my phone, opened the call log, and tapped Lazaro's name. It rang once, then voicemail. I held the phone close to my ear, breathed in and whispered, "Tomorrow, I let you speak through me." I sat alone in the bedroom, the camcorder connected to the old TV, remote in hand. The room was dim, only the glow from the screen and a small lamp casting shadows. My heart pounded. I hadn't watched this tape in over 20 years. The label, Thanksgiving 2002, faded in marker, but its weight pressed heavily on my chest. For a long moment, I didn't press play. Part of me feared what I might see, what memories I might admit I buried. Finally, I pressed the button. The screen flickered into a warm kitchen scene, laughter, plates clinking, voices overlapping. My own voice from years ago. "Don't bother him now, Laz." I winced hearing it. Lazaro, 7 years old, stood by the table holding out a crumpled card. He tried to catch my eye to hand it to his father, but Delmar ignored him, pouring drinks, chattering with guests. In the corner, Lazaro's shoulders slumped. He retreated, moving away with the card still in his hand. I leaned forward. That moment, I had dismissed him. My voice over the camera had been an excuse to silence him. Then the tape shifted. I heard a crash. Off camera, Delmar's voice snapped. "You're a disappointment. Go to your room." A muffled thud followed. Lazaro's voice small. "You promised you wouldn't hit me today." My hand shook. I paused, rewound, watched again. The slap wasn't shown, but the sound rang clear. I pressed pause and felt my chest tighten. How had I allowed this memory to stay buried? I pressed play again. I saw the room full, heard the echoes of voices, and I heard my own silence. The distance between what I thought I was giving him and what he felt grew wide on the screen. I couldn't unhear. In that moment, I built a home of silence, where love was measured by what wasn't said. I pressed rewind a few more seconds, watching the exchange again. The camera wobbled. Someone off to the side shifted, but his voice, so small, so desperate. That voice had carried weight I refused to carry until now. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I built a house where silence grew louder than love." I grabbed a notebook from the bedside and wrote, "He deserves truth, not excuses." My pen trembled, but I kept going. The bedroom door creaked. Delmar stood in the opening, red face, eyes cold. He saw the frame of that moment, paused on the screen. Lazaro's voice and the flash of motion. "That was a long time ago," he said, voice strained. I looked at him without turning away. "But it's not over. Not for him." He drew himself straighter, arms crossed. "You're dredging up the past. If you have to forget it to survive, then maybe it was never discipline." He started to walk away. I didn't stop him. I just watched the tape again, that tiny frame, and knew I couldn't let him disappear from it anymore. I reached for the remote, uploaded a short clip of that exchange to a private folder, shared it with Lazaro. I typed, "You were right, I'm ready to listen now." I awoke to the relentless buzzing of my phone, texts, notifications, alerts. The fundraiser photos had exploded across town pages, tagged with glowing captions, "Family in perfect harmony," "Truck gifted by proud mother," "Supporting the community, Thurston style." Underneath, someone had written, "Funny how no one thanked Lazaro." I sat up, heart pounding. Screens lit with smiling faces, Thurston or Lena, hands clasped, perfect angles. The narrative was being shaped without us. I swiped screenshots into my folder, captured who posted what, and watched the distortion spread like wildfire. They were rewriting history while I sat silent. I tapped on the official post from the event committee. The caption, "Thank you to Velma and the Anderson family for hosting tonight's gathering. Anderson." Thurston's wife's maiden name. No mention of Lazaro Anderson or Velma and children. My chest twisted. This was erasure, systematic and public. I sent a message to the event organizer. "You misnamed us. That excludes my son." The reply came seconds later. "With respect, that's how the post was approved." Shock turned to indignation. Later, my phone buzzed again. A text from a blocked number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." I stared at it. The tone, the cadence. It was the same kind of hush I'd heard from Delmar in the past. Thinly veiled threats from behind closed doors. I thought of small towns where power spoke in whispers and fear. I forwarded the threat directly to Eustacia, my lawyer. I documented it, time-stamped it. This was no longer a domestic fight. It was a fight for truth. I arranged a meeting at the back room of a local cafe with the event organizer. The place was quiet, chairs pushed aside, windows showing the street beyond. I sat down across from him. I placed my folder of screenshots and the misnamed envelope on the table. "You owe Lazaro truth," I said, voice steady. He cleared his throat. "I'm under pressure from donors, public image. We had to align with branding." I looked at him, noticing his falter. "What about my son's reputation?" I asked. "What about his visibility in his own family?" He swallowed. "We'll post a correction," he said, "but it will be minimal, buried in feed, secondary position." I nodded, my jaw tight. That was the game. Control the frame, bury the truth. Back home, I laid out my plan. Screenshots, the threat text, the envelope, all evidence. I began drafting a public letter to the local paper. I recorded a short video message. "Family isn't myth. He is my son." My phone rang. It was Vernon. He said he'd intercepted a private message thread between Thurston and Orlena. He read me a snippet. "Erase the part that bothers us." I held it like a lifeline. Proof spoken in private, now in my hands. I closed my eyes, breathed deep. Rage wasn't enough. I needed strategy. Just before I posted the letter online, Ray walked in. He held out the chipped wine glass, the same one that haunted our house. He placed it on the kitchen table with deliberate calm. I looked up. "What are you doing?" I asked. He met my eyes quietly. "You don't do this without a shield," he said. And in that moment I realized this war was no longer hidden. We'd stepped into daylight. The house was still. I sat on the edge of the couch, a half-cold mug of coffee beside me, screen lit up with thumbnails of screenshots, folders labeled proof and for Lazaro. Everything was there. Every fake caption, every twisted version of our life, every omission. I stared at the blinking cursor of a draft post, fingers hovering. My heart wasn't pounding. It was sinking. Fear didn't roar anymore. It lingered, low and steady, whispering, "What if they twist this too? What if you hurt Laz more by speaking?" Then the phone rang. Vernon. "Can we talk in person?" he asked. "I think I found something. It's big." I drove over. His apartment sat near the edge of town. Small, spare, quiet. The kind of place people don't look twice at. I parked by the lone mailbox and knocked on the door. He opened, pale, a little shaky. "Come in," he said. Inside, boxes lined the far wall. Old family stuff, unmarked tapes, scattered labels. Vernon pointed to a VHS marked Family 2005. I didn't know it had audio. I thought it was blank until I checked yesterday. He slid it into the player. The screen stayed dark. No image, just sound. Voices filled the room. Delmar's voice first, sharp, familiar. "We have to keep him quiet. He doesn't get a say in public." Then Orlena's voice, cool and clipped. "Yes, Mom agrees. Better he helps, not leads." I didn't speak, couldn't. They weren't just selfish. They weren't just proud. They had plotted his silence, planned his erasure. Vernon sat down across from me. His voice shook. "I was told to erase anything with Lazaro. They asked me to delete this. I didn't." He handed me the original tape. Still warm from the machine, labeled, time-stamped, unedited. "I knew it was wrong," he said, "but I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry." I looked at him, felt something shift. For once, I wasn't alone in knowing. I whispered, "Thank you," and clutched the tape like it was someone's heartbeat. Back in the car, I didn't turn the radio on. I drove home with that sound still ringing in my ears. He doesn't get a say. Not anymore. A headline formed in my mind. Hidden family tape reveals betrayal. But this wasn't about headlines. It was about truth. I rehearsed what I'd say, not polished, not for show, but real. He rewrote our history. Now I'll write his truth. That night I sat across from Eustacia over video. Her screen was dim, but her voice was clear. I played her the tape, recited Vernon's confession word for word. "Preserve everything," she said. "Document the chain. Don't duplicate. Prepare a controlled release." I nodded. "And be ready," she added. "Delmar may come at you hard." I looked straight at the camera. "He's been doing that for years. I'm still standing." A flicker of a smile from her. Then she got serious again. "You want to go public, Velma?" "I'm done asking permission." We ended the call. I saved all files twice. One copy locked in a private cloud, one with Eustacia. Then the phone lit up again. Delmar. I stared at his name for a second, then answered, walking into the hallway and closing the door behind me. His voice came fast, angry. "You're playing with fire now." I didn't raise mine. I didn't tremble. I just whispered back, "Then I'll become the flame." I spent the afternoon surrounded by evidence. Video clips cued, emails printed, the tape from Vernon, screenshots of false captions. My fingers hovered over the post button. Eustacia and I rechecked the order of release. First the meeting audio, then the Thanksgiving tape, then the receipts and message thread. In the silences between, I felt the tremor of resolve. Tonight, the truth speaks louder than fear. Ray appeared in the doorway. He said nothing, just watched me lay out every file. If he stood with me, he stood on the right side. My internal voice whispered as I appended timestamps and locked files. At exactly 9, I hit send. The public statement went live on the local news site, social media, and community forums. Within minutes, the clips streamed. Delmar's voice from Vernon's tape. "We have to keep him quiet. He doesn't get a say in public." Next, the dim image of the Thanksgiving dinner, the slurred voices, the slap heard through silence. Below, photos of the chipped wine glass, the unregistered truck receipt, the note, "For appearance only, not needed." The truck gift was exposed as symbolic, a mask, not empowerment. I watched as comments erupted, shock, disbelief, people tagging friends, demanding answers. Delmar's PR team struck back almost immediately. A polished video emerged claiming the clips were edited, context twisted. Anonymous accounts joined in, calling me manipulative, lying, desperate. I anticipated their move. I posted raw clips, untouched audio files, full transcripts. I invited independent forensic review. My heart raced, anger mixed with caution. The next day at the community meeting, Delmar walked in with that practiced calm. I stood when the crowd quieted. I spoke first in a steady voice, then firm. I played a short clip live, the one where Delmar says, "Keep him quiet." His face faltered. He stammered. The audience murmured. Some rose in support. Others looked down. "You can't erase a child's memory and expect him to stay silent," I said. The room held his breath. He offered a public apology, hesitant, conditional. "If I hurt you," I cut him off. "You didn't hurt me. You hurt him." Ray stepped forward, older children shifting uncomfortably. Some neighbors applauded, some remained silent. I didn't ask forgiveness. I demanded accountability. Late that night, I found an envelope slipped beneath my door. Inside lay a signed original deed, transferring the land behind our home to Lazaro. Scribbled in ink, "He finally gets his name back." I held that paper in my hands, the weight of legacy in solid ink. It was one of those fall mornings when everything feels still, like the world itself is waiting to exhale. I stepped out barefoot, the grass damp underfoot, the cold air biting just enough to remind me I was alive. Behind the house, the garden had gone wild. Ferns growing into the walking path, rosemary pushing past its borders, ivy curling around the old stone bench. It wasn't a mess. It was surviving, healing, a mirror of what I felt inside. I sat for a while, holding the land deed that Delmar had sent. His handwriting was scrawled at the bottom. Those 4 words. He finally gets his name. I didn't forgive him, but I released him from the power he once had over me. I whispered toward the sky, maybe to my mother, maybe just to the air, "You can rest. I'm not carrying your silence anymore." Later that morning, I sat on the porch steps with a mug warming my palms. Lazaro came out and handed me another. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. He sat beside me, close but not crowding. Then he set down a small frame between us. It was the only photo we had of him with his real father. Worn edges, faded color. "He would have been proud," I said, voice low. Lazaro didn't look at me. He just nodded and said, "No, you should be proud." After lunch, folks began arriving for what used to be our post-holiday gathering. This time it wasn't stiff with tradition. It wasn't for show. No Delmar, no grand speeches, just food, folding chairs, and people sitting where they wanted to. Eustacia came with baby Samuel. I watched as everyone passed him gently from lap to lap, a circle of arms and soft voices. When he landed in mine, I broke for a moment, a small hitch in my breath, but I didn't hide it. I kissed his forehead and held on. Later, my younger boy, quiet, always in the background, came up to me. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I should have said something," he murmured. "You were scared," I replied. "I know. We all were." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "I'm not anymore." "That's how we get braver," I told him, "when we stop pretending." That night, after everyone had gone, I went to my room and pulled out the box from the back of the closet. Old notes, letters from Delmar, cards written in his perfect political script. I burned them, one by one, not out of anger, but because I didn't need them anymore. I kept the wedding ring, though, tucked it in a smaller box, and one photo of us, from a time before the fractures. Not for sentiment, just as proof. I survived that. I walked down the hall and took down the portraits he once had framed, replaced them with moments that reflected who we really were. The messy, hard-won kind. Months passed. The air turned colder. Lazaro got a grant from the community to open a small mechanic shop. He named it Lazaro's Corner. Simple, honest. He repainted the old truck. His name was on the door now, not as a gift, but as its rightful owner. I spent my time at the senior center helping folks put their stories down. Some just needed a listener, others needed a pen. One afternoon, a reporter called, wanting to know how I stayed strong. I laughed a little and said, "I didn't. I just got tired of being silent." Then just last week, a letter came in the mail. No return address, neat handwriting. A young woman from the other side of the state had seen the interview. She ended her note with, "Your story helped me tell my own." I folded it slowly, gently, left it on the counter. From the kitchen, I heard Lazaro laughing, deep and easy, the kind of laugh that fills a room without asking permission. The baby was giggling too, the sound of pure joy. I walked back in without a word, no need for one. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the start of someone else's truth.